Welcome back, everyone. Mimic here. The warrior. Bold, brash, and full of rage. Arguably the most played class besides Paladin in any iteration of WoW as we know it. Make enemies bleed with heavy two-handed weapon strikes, shred them to pieces with two weapons, or protect your allies with your bolstering shield. This class has quite the variety. Today, I'm going to be showing you what I've been building on my warrior on Bronzebeard. First, let's take a look at gear. Right out the gate in Ascension, you can wear plate, but you're definitely not going to find it in low-level zones or dungeons. So we'll just stick with mail. If you're playing a damage spec, focus on strength. But if you're wanting to tank, look into more stamina. Either way, I would try to get as much armor as possible. Armor to the teeth is a very nice talent to have no matter what spec you're going. At max rank, you'll get 3 attack power every 108 armor that you have. Sounds great, especially once you start finding plate gear to equip. For weapons, it depends on what spec you're playing. If you're playing arms, look for a slow, heavy-hitting two-handed weapon. If you went my route and go Fury, find a somewhat slow main hand and a really fast offhand. Like, I'm using a dagger. It's probably not any good, but there's a secondary stat that I believe is important when playing any melee class that I'll cover here shortly. And of course, for all you tanks out there, find a fast main hand and a shield that looks the best for you stat-wise. For trinkets, the best I've found is the Premium Banana and Ravusor Talon. Premium Banana can be found in Stranglethorn Vale, and the Talon can be found at Angoro Crater. I'm under the impression that the banana scales with you, but don't quote me on that. For secondary stats, I would definitely be looking for armor penetration in any piece of gear that you find. The math is complicated, and it takes a few pieces of gear for it to truly matter, but it's literally a passive damage boost. How can you pass that up? Of course, you'll want crit and hit rating at or above the threshold, so you can actually hit things. A miss is 0 damage, and I don't know about you, but I don't like doing 0 damage. Now let's start with my talents. Then we'll move on to the enchants that I've chosen to play with, and some that could be just as good in some situations. So, as I was leveling, I started with Cruelty, and Armor to the Teeth, 2 points in an Unbridled Wrath, maxed Improved Cleave, 2 points in Commanding Presence, then Dual Wield Specialization, grabbed Death Wish, and maxed Precision, then 1 more point into Presence, maxed Flurry, and finished off Presence. I grabbed Bloodthirst, improved Whirlwind, then 2 more points in an Unbridled Wrath, maxed Berserker Stance, grabbed Rampage, and went back up and maxed Intensify Rage, and finished off Unbridled Wrath, and the final point went into Unending Fury for even more damage. What a mouthful. On to our bread and butter, the enchants. For my rares, I went Glyph of Whirlwind, Impale, Incite, and Deep Wounds for a slight DPS boost, but you could probably change it out for Glyph of Cleaving if you wanted to. For my epics, I went Counterpoise, Here Comes the Big One, and Titan's Fury. For my legendary, I went Ambidextrous Strikes. The last two synergize with each other, since if you have below 50 rage, you get a buff called Titan's Heroism, which makes your next 3 cleaves or heroic strikes free. With Ambidextrous at 3 stacks, makes your offhand do 15% more damage. So, more Whirlwind damage, and you have constant uptime with Glyph of Whirlwind. For my artifact, I went Heroic Leap because it's another AoE, and honestly, it looks goofy, and it makes me laugh. For my rotation, I typically start going in with Heroic Leap, then onto Whirlwind, spam Heroic Strike and Bloodthirst off cooldown, and rinse and repeat, and Cleave if I have max stacks of Ambidextrous. Pretty simple. Not the most amount of damage you can do, but it's good for dungeons, and since that's all we really have right now. And of course, always make sure your battle shadows up, but it has a 15-minute buff time on it since a recent patch. For single target, it's the same rotation, but include Death Wish at the beginning. Instead of going Ambidextrous, you can also go Dragon Roar. I would also change out Here Comes the Big One with Dragon Warrior. Basically, you're just using Whirlwind to refresh Dragon Roar over and over again. Big AoE, I would think. Like I said, this is just what I'm doing. You're more than welcome to do whatever you please. I've seen people go Gladiator Stance and play a DPS spec that way. Revenge does a lot of damage. There's also Raging Blow, which I hear is pretty decent at the moment. For the leveling experience, I had a lot of fun with it. I was going two-handed axe at first, but wasn't enjoying the amount of rage I wasn't getting. So as soon as I found some pretty good one-handed weapons, I swapped over to dual wielding after level 20 or so. I do have a tanking spec, but what I showed you was what I've been mostly playing. I might have used the spec once, since I kind of screwed myself by not taking Crackling Thunder as the enchant you get at 25. And for clarification, I did use the Aura of Experience and Pots for this whole playthrough since I have a lot of RDP from just donating to the team. And this will go for all the classes I'll cover in the future videos. I hope they don't take too long. These videos do take a long time for me to edit, and they're just for my enjoyment. And hopefully you learn something every time I post a video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again soon.